Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and I'm back with another ranked video. Yeah, freaking 2 in a week, putting out content like crazy. Enjoy all these videos I've been putting out outside of my weekly podcast, which you can all find on different playlists of the Jay Dennis channel. Enjoy this streak while you can, because I'll put out some videos, but then 13 months later, you might not get another one until aforementioned 13 months later. Anyway, we are back with another band that currently has 8 albums, studio albums, and is on the cusp of supposedly releasing a new album this year. So before the new album comes out, how about we rank their existing 8s? And if we want to talk about a band that has eclectic history behind it and has been around, at least in the garage, since the late 80s, but put their first album out in 95 and last album out in 2016 with a couple little hiatuses here and there, what better band to cover than Deftones? Now, where does Deftones sit on my list of bands that are like my all-time favorites? With regards to overall bands, they're probably like in my B list, okay? They're not like among my all-time favorite bands. Maybe they're like in my top 25 bands. And then my favorite album or albums from them, maybe like in the top 100 albums. So Deftones is a band I like a lot. I don't think they have any bad albums. And their music has had enough of an impact on me since I was a senior in high school to where I've been listening to them. I know all their albums front to back, so it's pretty easy for me to rank them. So again, I'm familiar with all their work. I went back and re-listened to everything just to be sure, and I feel pretty good about this rating. And some of these spots might surprise you. They're definitely going to be different than what most people do. So I actually feel good about this ranking, and that's why I felt compelled to do this one sooner. Because there's other bands I want to rank, but there's certain rankings that are just way too similar to everybody else's. I think with Deftones, mine might be unique. And if you want to hear some unique opinions and unique insights on certain albums that you're not going to hear too much everywhere else, this is the place to be. So understand, I like every album. Every album has something special to me, but there are certain albums that I think are underrated, and I think there are certain albums that are overrated. So with that being said, let's get on to the ranking. Ranking. Okay. At number 8, Gore. Probably the one ranking that's probably consistent with most of the other rankings I've seen. I've seen a lot of people put Gore at the bottom of their list. This is their most recent album. If you go on my Talking New Metal playlist, you'll actually see that I did like a 12-minute review of this album back in 2016 when it came out. This is my least favorite album. In that video, I think I gave it an 8, but in all seriousness, I'd probably give it like a 7.2 out of 10. And real quick, just to review the rating systems, for this particular list of albums I'm going to go over, it's just like in school or whatever. 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is excellent, and 10 is flawless. There's no albums on this list that are below 7, so there's no sense in going over those. Anyway, so Gore is a 7.2, and my favorite tracks off that album are Acid Hologram, the title track, Gore, and maybe Heart's Wires. But the album opens and closes on a strong note, but like it's mostly filler in the middle. It's just such a flat album. There's really nothing catchy in there. It sounds lazy. The guitar work is terrible relative to their other albums, that is. And it's just not a very exciting album. So easily it's at the bottom. There's very little I have to say about it. I've really listened to it a bunch of times. It's actually the only physical Deftones album that I own. So I've listened to it from front to back several times. But it's just flat. It's good at best, and we got like 2 or 3 good songs from it. The rest of it is just Geometric Headdress, a couple of other tracks. They're just La Petite Infantile, whatever that song's called. It's just a boring album. Great cover though. All right, number 7, Adrenaline. I was a little surprised that this album was this low on the list, but again, it's Deftones. They have a very interesting history and an interesting evolution over time. So I'll let you guys know right up front, I tend to have favoritism towards like more new metal alternative sounding albums. So you would think Adrenaline would be like towards the top. But as good of an album as this is, I gave it a 7.8 out of 10. As good of an album as this is, you know, the best tracks on this album, Lifter, Root, and Engine 9, are all great songs, especially Engine 9. But there's just too many dips in the album and a couple of boring parts, in my opinion. I know some of these songs probably hit home for you, but songs that don't really do it for me are track 2, Minus something, Minus Linus, 7 Words, and For Real and First. So, I mean, it's just not a consistent enough album for it to be towards the top. And, you know, it's their Raw album, it's their first, you know, so there's something special to it, but, you know, it's also a little bit unrefined. And frankly, one of my favorite things about Deftones is their low-ass tuned guitars. I think this whole album is in standard tuning, so I like when Deftones play on the 7 and the 8 strings. So that's a personal preference. I think it's a good album. And originally I hated this album for a stupid reason. I never wanted to listen to this album back in the day because the album cover is one of those fucking baby booger mucus thingies that you like stick up the nostril to like suck out a booger. Like what the hell kind of album cover is that? Is it supposed to be a statement about the infantile stages of a band, or is this supposed to be all the mucus that was supposed to come out? But anyway, it's raw, it's good. Those were some deep ass insights. So moving forward, let's hear some more. Next up at number 6, by the way, Adrenaline was album number 1, came out in 95, I believe. All right, next up at number 6, we have Diamond Eyes. These next couple of rankings were essentially a 3-way tie, so it was just like little minuscule things that gave certain albums the slight edge over the other. And the reason why Diamond Eyes fell at number 6 instead of higher is the album just closes on such a low note. The last 2 tracks are boring. They're some of Deftones' worst songs, in my opinion. But the front half and the middle of the album are pretty damn solid and consistent. But Diamond Eyes, the album itself, doesn't actually have any of my like all-time favorite Deftones tracks. Prince, Rocket Skates, and the Sex Tape, none of them got close to getting a 9 out of 10. They all got like 8.5. So the top tracks off of this album didn't elevate it high enough for it to be higher on the list. But, you know, tracks 1 through 9 or 1 through 8 up to Sex Tape, and even Risk is a decent song. They were consistent enough to give it a solid 8 out of 10. And, you know, Diamond Eyes is catchy. Command Control is a fucking banger. You've seen The Butcher is a good song. Like, there's a lot of good, like, heavy melody going on with this album. But the album kind of dips a little bit with Beauty School, even though I do like the alternative, melodic alternative metal kind of sound that they had going for it. But it just, you know, still a little bit of a dip. But again, the album kind of takes a shit at the end with the last 2 tracks, 976 Evil and Places Death. They're just kind of boring tracks. I did have this album when it came out. I lost my copy of it. My friend got 2 on accident. He gave me 1 and I lost my copy, which isn't very much like me. But so this album does have some sentimental meaning to me. You know, Sex Tape is a great track. We used to always fuck around with Rocket Skates like, guns, razors, knives, fuck with me. You know, just having fun with that. But there was like a lot of up and down, turbulence and fun shit circulating around this album. So this album does have a bit of a special place in my heart, but it's not my favorite Deftones album. That's why it's number 6. Number 5. All right, this is where shit is going to hit the fan. Diamond Eyes came out in 2010, by the way. And is album number 6. Okay. Number 5. White Pony! Sorry, motherfuckers. I'm not going to be the 18th person or the 500 millionth person that puts White Pony at the top of his Deftones list. Okay? But look, it's at number 5. It's like at the middle of the pack. And I like every Deftones album. So before you go clamoring on your keyboards and yelling at me, try to try to hear a different perspective and understand why this album might actually be overrated. But, look, I get it. This album's a classic, it's very unique, and I can see why this is typically seen as the magnus opus. Sorry, I see that word way too much. The magnus opus of Deftones. But I think people kind of have blinders on when they look at this album. But I'll grant some grace. Wait, hold on a sec. Yeah, so I'll grant some grace, and then we'll kind of get into my gripes with this album and why I think it's overrated. But hey, like I said, three-way tie between a couple of these albums. I gave White Pony an 8 out of 10, which means I think it's a great album. There's a couple tracks on there, and the bonus track, The Boys Republic, is one of my favorite Deftones tracks, but I'm talking about standard edition versions of these albums. So I'm not even factoring in the forced single Back to School with this particular release. If I were, I might bump it up to number 4. But I'm talking about the standard edition White Pony that's 11 tracks, starts with Feces Tiara, whatever, how you say that name, Feet Tisiara, and it ends with Pink Cell Phone. No, Mini Maggot, Pink, whatever it's called. Pink Cell Phone is on Saturday Night Wrist. Sorry. Anyway, White Pony, 11 tracks, came out in 2000. This is track album number 3, and I can see how in terms of a snapshot in time, why this album elevated them. This is again a great album, and there are particular tracks on this album that are some of Deftones' best tracks. Now, it sounds like I'm saying that about every album, but there are actually tracks off this album that I would put like in my top 10 Deftones songs. And if you have 8 Deftones albums, I don't think a song off every album is going to make it on my top 10. It won't. There probably won't be a single track off of Gore. There probably won't be any tracks off of Diamond Eyes. And there might be lucky if there's one Adrenaline song on there. But White Pony might have 2. Digital Bath is an excellent song. I love that song. Feces Tiara, or Feces Tiara, Feet Tisira. Fuck! It's a great opening track. It's catchy, and it kind of gives you a good idea of the tone that this album's going to set. And then RX Queen's one of my favorite Deftones songs, and then Korea is a fucking banger. I love that track. Where I think it gets kind of overrated, and why I don't understand why this is most people's favorite Deftones album, is there's a couple tracks on here that I would dare be so bold to say are filler. Now look, I'm not an elite metal musician, so who the fuck am I to judge music? But you know what? I'm just sharing my opinion. So the song Elite, the vocals are way too fucking saturated. Like, I think that they did that weird, overly distorted, saturated thing. They shouldn't have done it on the entire track. I think it ruined the song. So Elite gets like a 7 out of 10, and that's what dragged the score down. The actual riffs and the phrasing of the vocals is fun. It's catchy, but the track got ruined by the sheer fact that the entire vocal track is overly distorted and saturated. That effect should have been pulled back and maybe only used in some places. Otherwise, I think it would have been a great song. Street Carp is, I don't know why the hell that song's a single. It's another catchy song plagued is a strong word, slightly ruined by one of the only flaws I find in Deftones. And one of these flaws is actually one of their biggest strengths. This weird, abstract, free flow style of singing and lyric writing that Chino has. It's very unique. It's what makes Deftones Deftones. Oftentimes, it's used to their advantage. Sometimes it makes the song worse. And to me, if you're going to have a single, what's the hook in Street Carp supposed to be? Oh, 66, my new address. It's look, I'm sorry. I'm probably shitting on one of your favorite tracks. To me, I don't think it's a great song. So, again, from start to finish, this album has dips. So that's why it's not my top Deftones album. And then Knife Party is another weak single. It's catchy, but it's got a weird chorus. I'm not a big fan of it. Teenagers are great. Probably one of their best ballads. Change, as generic as it can sound, for its time, it was groundbreaking, and it's actually a really great single. So Change is actually a really good song. And do yourself a favor and thank me later. Go on YouTube, type in Britney Spears Toxic Deftones Change mashup. It's fun as hell to listen to. The outro track is a little slow. It's just the original and the slow version of Back to School, but it's just kind of a bit of a downer. And then Passenger, I know people like to circle jerk the fact that the guy from Tool or Perfect Circle's on there, and with Chino, yeah, the guys complement each other, and it's a great song. But again, it doesn't elevate the album high enough for it to be higher on the list. So, I spent a lot of time talking about White Pony. So let's get to the next album. Number 4, Saturday Night Wrist. Again, this is all about personal preference. The key of C sharp and quite other few things about this album are what make this the top of the 8 out of 10 list. So White Pony, Diamond Eyes, and Saturday Night Wrist all got 8 out of 10s for me, but little things here and there made certain albums go higher up, and Saturday Night Wrist is the top of that pack. Again, much like White Pony, it opens up on a strong note with Hole in the Earth, but it kind of continues the flow better. This album's more consistent throughout. Kim Dracula is one of my favorite Deftones tracks. Xerxes is great. And then the only thing that prevented this album from being higher up was not just the closing track, which is kind of boring, Riviere, but also fucking Pink Cell Phone, which, if you cut out like the last 2 minutes of Pink Cell Phone, it's actually a decent like transition track. But just that whole thing about fucking butt fucking and like residue in like a penis fold, like, yeah, we've all heard people talk shit about Pink Cell Phone, and I agree with it. It's a fucking weird, shitty song, and I like making fun of British people as much as the next person, but it's just kind of weird to end a track talking about them having bad teeth. But Up, Up, Down, Down, Left, Right, Start, Select is actually a really fun instrumental. I actually think that's a really good song. And then again, there's just a lot of like explosive vocal work in songs like Rapture, Cherry Waves, Xerxes and Kim Dracula, Combat, all great tracks. Mine, I think, is a good song. I wish Serge Tankian's feature would have been a little heavier, but I'm not nitpicking. It's still a good song. So Saturday Night Wrist, that's album number 5, and I think it came out in 2005. So yeah. Number 3, Koi No Yokon, 2012, album number 7. I got this album when it came out on iTunes, unfortunately, and I fucking love this album. It got an 8.3 out of 10 for me. Initially, though, I thought this album would have been lower because I was not a big fan of Swerve or Romantic Dreams, Swerve City. I thought it kind of opened on a slow note, but then tracks 3, 4, and 5, whew, Leathers, Poltergeist, and Entombed, tremendously good Deftones tracks, especially Leathers, one of my favorite Deftones songs of all time. The heavy is among the heaviest on this album, and the melodic is among the most melodic. And the tone of this Deftones album, like the actual like sonicality of the production and everything, it's top notch. This is Deftones like at their modern day best. The only track it really dips at is Graphic Nature. Other than that, very consistent album from start to finish. Swerve City might not be the strongest opening, but it's not a bad opening. So that's why this album did well enough to get to number 3. Goon Squad's a fun track, and What Happened to You is a good closer. So, Tempest, Gauze, Rosemary, consistency throughout those 3 songs. But again, the explosiveness of Leathers, the heaviness of Poltergeist, and just the beautiful ambiance of Entombed. Like, I fell asleep listening to this album a few times, and it's fucking intoxicating. So I love Koi No Yokon. I don't know if it's underrated, but it's definitely one of my favorite Deftones albums. And again, even among the top 3 Deftones album, it's closely contested. So big deal there. Number 2, Around the Fur. Wait, what? Jay Dennis, Mr. Nu Metal guy, didn't put Around the Fur at number 1? What the fuck? And that means number 1 is okay. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk for a minute. Around the Fur was this close. You can't see it, but was like a pubic hair close to being number 1. The only problem was that final track, MX, it just dragged it down. It was one of the weakest album closers in my opinion. It really didn't offer anything. And even if you scroll through all 37 minutes of it and find the bonus tracks, or the hidden tracks, even the hidden tracks didn't really do much to elevate it. So, but beyond that though, My Own Summer, one of the best openings to an album. Labia, Mascara, all great continuations of that. Around the Fur, the title track is a fucking banger. Be Quiet and Drive, one of Deftones' best singles. I fucking love Be Quiet and Drive. I slept on that song for way too long. And then Lotion, Die the Flu, Head Up. Like, this is their most consistent album from tracks 1 to 10. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9. I guess this album's 10. Yeah, tracks 1 through 9, consistent as hell, but then MX kind of drops it off a little bit. Around the Fur got an 8.3 out of 10. You know, this was a much more refined version of Adrenaline, and they tuned down to C sharp for a lot of it, so it sounds heavier, and it's just, it aged super well. And again, it just comes down to preference, because for the longest time, I thought that this was my favorite album. This one came out in 97. It was album number 2, the sophomore success. Great album cover. But yeah, there was just something that prevented it from being number 1. And this video is going on a little long, so I'm going to just go ahead and get to number 1. Deftones, Selftitled, 2003, album number 4, and the first album from Deftones that I ever got into. Now, you'll probably hear me have talked about this story a little bit on my Gore review from 2016. But the story goes, it was 2008. I was a senior in high school. Deftones had already put out a bunch of music by then. My English teacher was playing Battle Axe on his laptop. He had his laptop open. He was sitting at his desk. The laptop was at his little podium thingy. So I walked up to see what was playing, and I'm like, oh, Battle Axe, Deftones. Hey, Mr. Whatever his name was, Mr. It started with a T. Well, I know it. I just don't want to say it, for privacy reasons. Hey, Mr. T. I like this. Would you mind burning me a copy of this? And he was a cool guy, so he said, yeah, sure. He's like, you want anything else? And it wasn't sarcastic. I was just like, oh shit, you got Queens of the Stone Age too? I'd like to get into them. And he's like, cool. I'll burn you with probably their best album. And it was Sounds of the Deaf or something. It was the album that had No One Knows on it. Anyway, so he burned me those albums. That was really my first experience with Deftones, was the Self-Titled album, which most people would say it's a very weird album to get into with them. Why not White Pony? Why not Around the Fur? Why not Koi No Yokon? Well, everybody's fucking different. That's why. So senior year of high school, not to sound cliche, it was a very sentimental time for me. So this album was definitely a soundtrack to it. And oddly enough, there were tracks that I slept on. But yeah, my all-time favorite Deftone tracks are on this album. So this album got an 8.4 out of 10, so only beat Around the Fur by 0.1. But it's the only album that I gave a track a perfect 10. You know what that fucking track is? Fucking Bloody Cape. That song is flawless. That song is fucking flawless. I've listened to Bloody Cape so many times. That song gets me fucking amped. Like, it's the perfect mix of everything that is Deftones. And it's got the heaviest breakdown. It's in drop G sharp. This is the album that introduced low-ass Deftones. You cannot fuck with the guitar tone and the drumming, and just you cannot fuck with the production. Sorry, I'm cursing so much, but you cannot mess with the production and the tones of this album. This album the album itself is not perfect. This album took some time to grow on me. And initially I thought it was going to be like number 2 or number 3, but upon listening to it from start to finish again, it really doesn't dip at all. The only songs that fell below an 8 were Death Blow, which was 7. Good Morning, Beautiful, Death Blow, Lucky You, and Moana. They all got like a 7.8 or a 7.9. Lucky You got a 7.5. But my favorite tracks, When Girls Telephone Boys, got a 9.2. Battle Axe, the song that got me into Deftones, got a 9. And then Bloody Cape got a 10. So those great tracks, and then of course Anniversary of an Uninteresting Event, one of my favorite ballads from Deftones. It's a gorgeous song. Initially, I didn't think this album opened on the best note with Hexagram, but you just cannot fuck with that strumming, the tone. It's just so dark. And I get it. This is a dark Deftones album. It's a weird follow-up to White Pony, but I think that this is just what makes their story and their catalog more interesting. So even though I think the weird verses of Hexagram, like the what's up whenever he's saying, I know it's my favorite album, but I can't even tell you the lyrics. The thing is, like, you just can't fuck with the level of singing and the amount of passion that's behind his voice. I don't know if he was at his vocal peak on this album, but there's just something about the raw and the completely polished sound being intertwined that make this album great. Needles and Pens is a great song. Minerva's a great track. Even the good tracks, Good Morning Beautiful, Deathblood, those are all good songs. But it's the top tier tracks. When Girls, Telephone Boys, Battle Axe, Bloody Cape, those are the songs that elevate this album to the top. And of course, Anniversary of an Uninteresting Event. So, did the top Deftones album have the most consistency throughout? I don't think so. Did it open or close on the highest note relative to their albums? I don't think so. That might have been No Yokon, possibly. Or even, dare I say, nope. Self-Titled, top of the ticket for most of these. Shit, this video went on way too long. All right, guys. Well, if you want to rip me to shreds in the comment section, I really don't give a shit. Or if you just want to say why you agree or disagree with some of my choices or what your personal rankings are, subscribe to the channel and enjoy these consistent releases while you can, because I might be inconsistent in the next month. Who knows? Anyway, Deftones fucking rock. And fuck. Be sure to check out my other ranking videos. I recently did Amir, who put out a new album recently. I've done Sum 41, and I've done Slipknot, and if I'm missing any others. And a couple bands that I'm going to be doing in the near future include Seven Dust, Slayer, Megadeth, Papa Roach, and if there's any bands you want me to rank, if they're in my wheelhouse of artists that I like, I'll definitely consider it. I know I'm hard on myself for making these videos way too long, but this isn't just a ranking, it's also me reviewing every album. So thank you guys for listening. Subscribe, check out the rest of the channel for everything else, and catch you all in the next one.